The people in the United States have a long history of seeking independence and freedom. This can be seen no better than with how many states there were at one point countries. Today, we will discuss a lesser-known country that later became a state that isn't Texas, Hawaii, or California. Today, we will talk about Vermont. The beginnings of the Vermont Republic can be traced back to the American Revolution and the story of Ethan Allen's Green Mountain Boys. This small militia group was instrumental in finding early cannons and guns for General George Washington's fighting force. They came from an area near the Canadian border that was claimed by New York, New Hampshire, and Quebec, called the Green Mountains. In 1777, a year after the Revolution began, 28 towns in what is now Vermont declared themselves independent from Quebec, New York, and New Hampshire. This created an interesting dynamic, a landlocked English-speaking nation that was nestled between two other warring powers. While this is the case, many people from Vermont would also serve in the Continental Army throughout the war and would still kind of consider themselves Americans. The Vermont Constitution was penned in 1777 and was created as a way for preserving their identity in the face of being overtaken by the claims of New York. Their constitution would be based off of the Pennsylvania Constitution, which meant that it was highly influenced by the ideas of the Revolution and revolutionaries such as Thomas Paine, and as such advocated for the individual rights of people who lived there, and importantly for future events, completely outlawed slavery in the Republic of Vermont. Another way their constitution reflected the ideas of the American Revolution was how it stated the case for unalienable rights, a famous quote that is associated with the American and French Revolution and many other things from the Enlightenment period. Being its own country, the Vermont Republic also began to create its own currency, called the Vermont copper. The currency was used in the territory up until it joined the Union in 1791. Yet, while it can be seen that the Vermonters wanted to differentiate themselves from the rest of the Revolution and away from those people, they also saw themselves as Americans. The goal was always to become incorporated into the Union, except for during a little part of the war in 1781 when Ethan Allen and a couple other Vermont representatives entered secret negotiations to rejoin the British Empire. While they were offered favorable terms, later in 1781, the Battle of Yorktown happened, and seeing the writing of the wall, the Vermonters decided it wasn't worth it. At the time, the state's motto on its coins read Stella Carta Decima, which translates into English from Latin as the 14th star, in this case being as a reference to what they hoped to be the 14th star on the American flag. Vermont finally became a state when in 1791, the state of New York revoked all claims on the territory of Vermont and allowed them to enter into the Union. The admittance of Vermont became the first time the United States would add a state to balance out each other on the grounds of slavery, as Vermont was allowed in as a counterweight to the state of Kentucky being admitted, a slave state. It is interesting how such a small state had such a major impact on the nation, especially when considering everything that it did in regards to slavery. Vermont is a place of many firsts. The first soon-to-be state to completely outlaw slavery, the first slave state, free state counterweight, and finally, the first country to ever be admitted into the United States as a state. If you enjoyed this video of lesser-known history that was pretty quick, please hit that like button and subscribe. The channel has been growing very fast recently, and it would really mean a lot to have everybody's support and get on board. So if you did, hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.